Welcome to our debate about the Central European Free Trade Agreement. You know, that's one of my favorite debates. I'm already doing that. I was actually working personally as a consultant in CEFTA World in Albania, Montenegro, Macedonia, Montenegro, and in Serbia. And this was really already my reality when I was working as an economic consultant for the Ministry of Trades in these countries in the years from 2005 to 2016 when I came to Ukraine. So it was somehow logical to bring this topic with me. I was honored to publish an article with Professor Aslund. I want to mention him in New Observer. And there is an ongoing debate. And it led a little bit to my crisis with the Austrian political elite. I have to say that as well, because that was not supported. So nobody really explained me the history, so I tried to find out what is actually the understanding and what's the problem. Because from simple economics, it is so logical that Ukraine and Georgia and also Azerbaijan and also Armenia and Armenia obviously is in the Eurasian Economic Union, so probably that's excluding to join CEFTA. But that would be a softer way, and maybe the Russians wouldn't mind so much. But okay. The most important for me is Ukraine's membership and Georgia's membership in Central European Free Trade Agreement. So I really tried to steel myself in this debate. I made these several videos now. I made all this PowerPoint presentation. I made many articles about it. I made press conferences, not very well attended. But at least thanks for the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center in 2017 for letting me do that. And so I have already made several videos, but I want now to go into the details of the debate because I found this very good paper of the Ukrainian Civil Society platform for the ERP. And also I found, and now it's very topical because it's another ERP summit, now under the Croatian presidency. And, it's very much, Croatia was a member of CEFTA, it matured now to the European Union. And it's now the president even of the European Union for this half a year. And so I try again to bring this topic because a permanent free trade agreement which works is a wonderful thing. And now there was this paper from the Ukrainian Civil Society, and they have said it's good, one option we have to discuss and so on. So what are they proposing? They are thinking about a regional trade agreement of the GUAM. GUAM is the Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova, and Azerbaijan. These four countries of ERP to have a regional economic integration system. Look, that's all possible. Also, the Balkan wants to do a deeper internal market kind of style, regional economic area, it's called, REA. Since the Trieste summit of the Berlin for Balkans in 2017, the idea is to deeper integrate. Because it's again the steps. You are just bilateral cooperation, then you have FTAs, then you have a customs union, and then you have an internal market, then you have a currency union, then you have a political union. That's the theory of economic integration. So having a FTA, regional one, doesn't exclude that some countries go deeper. So when the Ukrainians want to have in GUAM a deeper regional economic relations, more openness, allowing free movement of people, free movement of capital further, that's all totally fine. It doesn't exclude to join CEFTA. CEFTA is working. GUAM FTI, I've learned now, it was concluded 2003 already, still not in force, not working. So there is a problem. And CEFTA is working. Obviously, there are issues, like with every human organization, but it's a good platform. It has already matured 8 countries towards the European Union level. That's Poland, the Visegrad, that's the 4 Balkan countries, Slovenia, Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria. 8 who were a member and are now in the EU. And that's a good track record. You first have to achieve that. So it's not excluding deeper integration in the ERP. It's totally possible, and it can be done like the Balkans do it. It's a very good system, and for the 3 countries, which one of them, Moldova, is already member, so it's so logical that Ukraine is joining as well, Georgia as well, so from 7 it's 9, and possible Azerbaijan, and why not, hopefully one day it will be Armenia as well to join and that, and maybe then there will be a reorientation in Belarus as well. And CEFTA is a soft form of integration, a good form of integration. It works, yeah, and it's real. And so I really appeal for the Ukraine and Georgia immediately in 2020 to join the Central European Free Trade Agreement. Look, CEFTA is not panacea, like a magic solution, a miracle, you know. It cannot replace the political process of accession. That I never said. And I understand the disappointment of some in Ukraine who say, why bother with CEFTA, we want to be in the EU. Look, yes, everybody wants that, yeah. It's a wonderful thing to be in the EU, but it's not so easy. And first you have to learn, to prepare, and to train. And this was actually the idea of CEFTA from '92 as a preparational mechanism for the Central Europeans. That's why it was established for the Visegrad countries to join. Good, the Baltic countries didn't need it. But if you had the political will and stamina and reform effort of the Baltic countries, yeah, then we wouldn't be in this mess today. For the Visegrad countries it worked very well, for the Balkan countries it worked very well, and it will work now also for the EAP countries very well. The political disappointment of not having a EU potential candidate country. Look, step by step, we have to convince that you are really very serious long-term moving towards the West. And CEFTA is a good long-term solution to really get acquainted, to improve, to perform, to have real results, not just declarations. In the economic reality, real lasting results, and that's the basis then to convince for EU potential candidate status. So this paper is very negative in that sense that it really doesn't give so much benefit, it doesn't lead directly to the EU, and then we have to do all the things the EU does. Okay, so you want to do something different? The Chinese trading system, the Russian trading system, the Indian trading system? Good. You know, or you have something to invent yourself, to share with the world, which kind of trading regulations Ukraine can give to the world. If there is something like that, I don't know it. I think the EU trading system is very fair, balanced between 27 countries and the needs of the accession countries and everybody. So this is anyhow what all the countries who have signed the DCFTA have more or less completely committed over time to implement the EU trading system, regulatory framework. So it's not different in CEFTA. It's only one EU. It's only one NATO. It's only one regulatory framework of the European Union. There's not a German trading system or Italian trading system, or if you want any alternative, I don't think you can join America or Russia. If you want to join the EU or if you want to be trading with the EU, that's more or less the trading system to adopt. And as far as I understand, in the DCFTA, they have not invented a separate system for Ukraine. It's the same like in CEFTA. And so please, that argument I really cannot understand. Yeah? So the question about CEFTA, I think the political issues about CEFTA cannot replace the question of EU political accession, but it can help very much to make the case really convincing, and that's very important. I mentioned already CEFTA has matured 8 countries already, 7 are members there, so it's a good group to be in for Ukraine and Georgia under these conditions today, and I recommend to join in 2020. So I would like to understand what could be, because it's important to understand the arguments against it, you know. Maybe there is a lack of understanding because the Ukrainian and Georgian political elite, they change so fast when one has understood what CEFTA is. Because the EU, they understand fast, but CEFTA is a kind of a learning chamber, learning room before EU accession, and they don't understand because that's not so well documented and not so well known. And then they are losing the power already, yeah? Because it's very fast. Maybe that's one of the problems. Yeah? So when you look at the internet, you can see that Ukraine wanted to join CEFTA already in 1997, I found the article. Ukraine moving closer to CEFTA. That's 23 years of this debate. It was really making my day, this article. You have to read it on Jamestown. It was then decided to build up the regional thing, you know, Guam. Look, because of whatever, the Kosovo War maybe. It was in 97, yeah, basically the Kosovo War maybe the many other reasons. Maybe Ukraine moving again, being feeling rejected, and maybe it's much better to speak Russian with the friends from Georgia and Azerbaijan, and at that time it was also Uzbekistan inside. Maybe it's good to be among itself and to be in the same swamp, in the same ex-Soviet kind of learning nothing but talking about nostalgic way, but not having to challenge yourself, not leaving your comfort zone because you speak the same language still in international meetings. Yeah. Now after the Euromaidan, the Ukrainians very much do the Ukrainian and speak the Ukrainian. But when you go to the big meetings, GUAM, you know, the language again is Russian because it's the common communication. Many people, decision makers, they don't feel comfortable in English. They speak this kind of Euro-English. They think it's bad. Yeah? It's the fair language to speak because nobody speaks it very well. The British anyhow have left now. So that's really a neutral communication tool. To go in this meeting speaking Russian, you know, you can believe that in the Balkans nobody wants to hear Russian, only when you come, Putin comes with a lot of money maybe, but that's really not the way to do it. The language must be English, and the communication in this European English, and getting out of the comfort zone, learning something. That's very important, not staying in the swamp of history and being in ex-Soviet, a really very negative term for anybody who knows the crimes of the Soviet Union, which has committed against its own people, first of all, but against the world as well. So, you know, really, that was the decision then, to be in this soft comfort zone. So then GUAM was the idea to do a kind of a regional FTA. It was signed, but it was never implemented. Because in reality it's not so easy, and when you don't have help from the EU, really significantly it doesn't work. Yeah? And then you do your own things with your own experts, regionally, based on ex-Soviet kind of regulatory basis, and then you find it's unfair, it's complicated, yeah? And then it works like in Russia, where the Russians impose things. Yeah? You know, because they have the power to do, and the Belarusians, Armenians, Kazakhstan, they have to salute, yeah. So, but in the GUAM situation, Ukraine was not so strong, and so then it was simply not implemented, yeah. And so that's the complete reality. And, you know, you try to do your own thing, but they don't work, yeah. So then additionally, it's a little bit that the Balkans is perceived from the Kosovo War, then the poverty, you know, there's a lot of cultural prejudices against Southern Europeans, against the Balkans as well in Ukraine, desperately poor. In reality, all of the Balkan countries, even in Kosovo, is now richer than Ukraine, Moldova, Armenia. Armenia, okay, it's close, and even Azerbaijan, with all its petrol wealth, is only at 4,700 GDP per capita, and Kosovo is at 4,400 now. So actually, it's not true that the Balkans is poor, it's the ERP that is poor. It's especially Ukraine and Moldova, which are particularly very poor, and very sad situation given this kind of prosperity level in Europe in the year 2020. And so there's a lot of cultural prejudices, yeah. And so Ukraine has only achieved in all these years now of the Euromaidan to have FTA with Montenegro and North Macedonia. And that's really very, very poor performance. From 6 countries, only 2, yeah. And it has still not recognized Kosovo. Maybe that's also one of the reasons. But then also, of course, with Serbia, and with Bosnia, they have not achieved FTA up to now, but also not with Albania. So it's not so deeply integrated still. And politically, there was no talk about the Albanian FTA, but I think it was still not done. And so we are in this kind of sad status of affairs. And also Serbia and, of course, the Republika Srpska of Bosnia are perceived as pro-Russian, so Ukraine doesn't want to hang out with them, and Serbia maybe is opposing that even. And also there is still strong anti-Albanian and anti-Muslim, you can call it prejudices, racism, But it's very strongly fostered by Russian media, which is still so strong in all these countries, you know. Of course, you know, there's a lot of patriotism, but the television, a lot of people in the evening still look at Russian television. In Azerbaijan, in Georgia, in Ukraine, Russia is still such a strong media power that it dominates, and then something is happening, you know, in Albania or in Macedonia, it is always used, you know, in this kind of fear-mongering about Muslims and extremism and terrorism. And this is very strong. I think maybe that's one of the reasons. There's also a very strong arrogance and ignorance leading to a certain megalomania, especially in Ukraine, because they are interested in working with EU, with Japan, you know, South Korea, Nigeria, Indonesia. If you don't have more than 200 million people as a market, you are a little bit disregarded as less interesting from the Ukrainian elite because they are big, you know. And, you know, given the injustice of the economic system, when you see in Ukraine, you have really very rich people, and they maybe are global businessmen and amazing millionaires, and oligarchs of big standing and billions, because of course they have not a real competition enforcement. It's all politically controlled. They are like in the 19th century America, in this time before Teddy Roosevelt enforced antitrust legislation, or in many European countries before the EU with a powerful anti-competition enforcement mechanism really reined in this kind of oligarchic, being closed, kind of crowning capitalist, whatever you call it. But basically you concentrate the wealth in the hand of the few and nobody looks about it. Nobody cares because the enforcement bodies are nominally correct doing everything, but have no political backing or independent power to really enforce anything like putting the trusts apart, breaking up these family conglomerates which dominate this economy, and you have this land banked kind of big family run oligarch 100 who are basically dominating the Ukrainian economy. And then, you know, everybody is somehow living very happily because they fund, of course, the political system again. And so they don't want to have this kind of strong competition supervision, and then they are quite happy with themselves. And then they obviously don't care very much to learn about the EU because they understand that's very complicated for them, and their economic model would be changing and would be much better for most of the Ukrainians, and also for them because they would be in a much richer economy, still very economic, important power players. We also have very big and rich families in Germany and Austria, and you know, despite all our history and even now the big success and with enforcement of competition, obviously they are the very strong economic actors in a very rich economy. But this kind of understanding and this kind of more complicated way to stay very rich is not really the level of understanding of the Ukrainian oligarch elites. So the other point is, besides arrogance and ignorance, is also there is no direct way to the EU via CEFTA. This is of course very sad, but you know, it's not a magic way. The political deadlock in which Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia are, that they want to join the European Union, but the European Union is not ready to grant them this status, is a tragedy we cannot solve with CEFTA alone. It's not the Southeastern European countries who can change that, But, you know, what helps, of course, is to be with them and to learn with them. That's very important, and to show that you are long-term committed to a European future by joining institutions which basically prepare for that. And that's, I think, a very powerful argument, And, of course, then many say, you know, we are very big in Ukraine, we want to have the direct way, we are more comparable to Poland, You know, and then the alarm bells in Brussels and Berlin are ringing. You know, when you then compare yourself to Poland, then everybody says, okay, that looks really very similar. So it's very realistic. So is this a kind of second Kaczynski Poland in the making? a big, powerful Slavic country with very much identity problems, which wants first to reassert itself in very strongly nationalistic terms and anti-German kind of thinking in order to overcome its own insecurities, in order to make a lot of problems like not joining the Eurozone and so on, and creating problems in the rule of law. Is this the future of Ukraine? Okay, then everybody says, oh good, yeah, we really don't need that, yeah? And that's the consensus then in the European Union, and then they say, in EAP, I think you can learn a lot and we help you a lot, and they will. Europe will give a lot of money to Ukraine and to all EAP now at the summit again to help in Corona crisis. But they will never really give you a EU perspective if you tell them we are the Polish Kaczynski version number 2.0, a bit from the east. Thank you very much. That's certainly not the way to be a EU member country. So the appeasement of the EU elites to Russia, you know, that's of course a sad reality of France, of other countries, some parts of Austria, Italy very much. You have seen that in the Corona crisis. But you know, you to blame that you don't join CEFTA because of the Italian position. I mean, it's not the fault of the Albanians or of the Montenegrins that this political thinking is strong in the southern European states, yeah, and certainly in others as well. You know, this is really the wrong reason why not to join, and in fact, and it's better to join. So I have made that case already, and let me just, yes, and there is of course the argument of the pro-European, pro-Balkan European elites like the Austrians or the Italians as well, you know, and that's already an established consensus that the Balkans should join the European Union. That means, you know, Moldova in the CEFTA has already made that one a bit more complicated, because then the appeasement group had to separate the CEFTA into two sessions, yeah, and so bringing Ukraine and Georgia in must be like a two-level CEFTA, the one with a EU future, the one not, yeah, and that's really maybe then making a lot of things complicated for the Balkans in EU people, like many of the Austrian elite. They have not really understood still the real desire of the Ukrainians, Georgians and Moldovans to join in the EU, and so they are very much focused on the Balkans. And then they think, oh, what is over there? We don't know very well. But, you know, that could make potentially very complicated the European future of the Balkans. So better stay where you are. We will take care of you later. We will help you a little bit. You know, we are friendly. Yeah, everybody's friendly, but, you know, don't join CEFTA better now, yeah, because, you know, we have these small circles of friends, we know very well the Serbs, we know the Kosovo situation, we help them very much to be member ones, and so we have these instruments, and don't make it complicated, so better stay where you are and hang out with Georgians and with Azerbaijanis and ex-Soviet, yeah, that's also what many in the Austrian elite think is the best way, so there is not a lot of support, even opposition to CEFTA membership for Georgia and Ukraine from that very positive, friendly side for the Balkans, but not for Ukraine. So I say a CEFTA of 10 to 12 members is very good. It's benefiting the good and the old members. Yeah? You know, there is also a fear in some of the like smaller Balkan countries. They are economically, you know, still very small markets, and then in their protectionist thinking, because all politicians ultimately are protectionists. This is a little bit their perceived task as protecting my people, and in a way protecting in security terms, that's their task, yeah. But you know, they see then of course, you know, a big wheat producer, a big steel producer, that's all very complicated, and so how can we somehow compete with Ukraine if it joins CEFTA, yeah? So that's something I think we have to see again, the economic argument that more competition is better, that Ukraine can offer a lot of market access as well, and so that's really very much to alleviate these fears. It's important to build some friendships, understand the fears of the smaller producer countries of the Balkans, and also explain them what can be the benefit in the market access for Ukraine, because it's a much bigger market in a sense. It's 120 billion, you know, compared to Serbia just have half the market. And compared to some smaller markets like Albania or Kosovo, it's really a big opportunity to open that. And maybe there is also the problem that the CEFTA should be ending. You know, once all the member countries are in the EU, the idea is that CEFTA ends. Yeah? So with Moldova, they anyhow don't know how to deal with that. And so having new members in might be somehow ending or disturbing this narrative. We are the only free trade agreement which once will expire because all of us will join the EU. Yeah? And that's what the CEFTA officials tend to say. So it's somehow something which needs to be changed, because CEFTA is very good, can be staying for the long term, can be also very useful for other countries, like Azerbaijan will not join the EU in the future. I don't think so, for the very long term at least. Yeah? So can be also a tool for Azerbaijan for the long term, for the Caucasus. And anyhow, the question is, how long will really the EU accession take? Yeah? In my wish and my demand and my videos, hopefully very soon for Albania, Montenegro, Macedonia, in this mandate. But maybe, like Macron says, it will anyhow take 15 years or 20 years for some countries, or for Ukraine maybe for 50 years, who knows? Yeah? You know, I don't hope so, but let's say CEFTA is a very good working tool, so why give it up when nothing else is there to replace it? Yeah? It's not good, this narrative of ending CEFTA. So, and then the fear about being thrown in the Russian-Ukrainian war. Is it really like that, you know, that the Russian-Ukrainian war will be extended to the Balkans because of CEFTA? I don't think so, yeah. That's some totally different issues, yeah. Then the fear, you know, that CEFTA membership of Ukraine might make Putin very angry, and Putin then invests less in the Balkans. Anyhow, he doesn't invest in the Balkans. Maybe a little bit in Serbia, like donations, some military support, yeah. But, you know, what's the fear? Yeah? This whole energy dynamic of the last decade is anyhow now very much different. So I don't see that as a very... yeah, and that Serbia, of course, is very pro-Russian country, even had 300 fighters in the Russian side of Donbass, and there was a lot of diplomatic problems between Serbia and Ukraine, and this leads then Serbia to block Ukrainian EU CEFTA membership. You know, okay, if Serbia is such a powerful country in CEFTA, then anyhow something is wrong in CEFTA, and we have to talk with the Serbs, yeah? Because it cannot be that, you know, European and Ukrainian policy is somehow taken hostage by Serbia. And if that's the reality of CEFTA, then CEFTA needs to be reformed with the help of the EU and powerful actors like Germany, America, to tell to the Serbs that you are not hijacking institutions and abusing them for your very peculiar foreign policy, while at the same time you are getting €1.5 billion from the EU and IPA funding, and you are happily building your highways, and you are complaining about not getting enough and all this. Yeah? So there's something wrong then, if that's the reality. I don't know, but maybe that's then a little bit something also the Croatians should really seriously look into. And, you know, maybe the problem is also that Ukraine joining then, and Georgia as well, so Moldova wouldn't be alone, so it would be somehow, they would feel encouraged to be pro-European, and that some in the EU may not want. And they would sit on the table together with Albania, Macedonia, Montenegro, learn a lot of the EU accession process, and then be faster. And maybe some in the EU don't want it, yeah. But that's also wrong, because, you know, they have already 3 NATO countries. It's also a big success of the Balkans, yeah? Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania. I made a separate video about that one. So maybe also it would be making the ERP internal dynamics more complicated. Ukraine, Belarus, yeah? A lot of trade is happening there. Maybe that would be complicated, yeah? But anyhow, the ERP is a little bit of a complicated animal in a sense, because it is already very divided with 3 pro-EU countries, with DCFTA, with Belarus very much in the Eurasian Union, with Armenia a bit of an island of Eurasian Economic Union in the Caucasus, and with Azerbaijan as a non-aligned, even the chairman of the non-aligned movement, yeah? And the petrol country and not a democracy, in any meaningful term. And so that's a little bit, you know, you have free trading systems in 6 countries. Yeah? So the idea to have a separate ERP, economic happiness union, customs union, whatever, is not happening, because it's much too divided between these powerful blocks, yeah? And everybody has found its own compromise statement or own direction. And, you know, I don't see that the dream of air-bay unity is actually never was, and this was only possible in the Soviet Union with the tanks of Russia. So it won't happen, and so the future is really to support the countries which really want to be more pro-European and support them more. The other argument can be that Kosovo-Serbia conflict in CEFTA, they had a trade conflict now, it's now finished, but you know the Kosovo-Serbia problem might be also not very attractive for Ukraine and Georgia because they have their own minority issues, they have their own issues with the Russian-occupied territories, and they always think about Crimea and Kosovo, which Putin has made the case, yeah, which is totally wrong. They think about North Ossetia and the power of Russia in these regions, and they always mix up these arguments, and then they don't want to learn. They don't want to go there. They don't want to sit there because they could be, by similar uneducated people, accused of mixing things up for their own selves and losing an argument against Putin. Yeah? I mean, you will anyhow never win the argument against Putin because it's much too powerful communicator and much too directly in the heads of so many. So it's not possible. So ultimately, to learn, to sit, would also educate why the West has done the liberation of the Balkans, that it was a Kosovo liberation war, it also liberated the Serbs of Milosevic, and all these important arguments. But you know, that's not what actually CEFTA is about. You just sit there and discuss about trade. It's the trade ministers meeting. But you know, it would also help to educate a little bit about the debates of '99 and about 2008, and it would help very much because it's all a bit connected and very much connected also to joining NATO. And as I understand, Georgia and Ukraine very much want to join NATO. So learning about and actually recognizing Kosovo would be much better. By the way, if you ever want to be in NATO, that will be really very helpful to see that you have understood that. But maybe it's anyhow this Ukraine, Georgia is a victim of this Putin founding myth of the Kosovo War '99 being unjust, and maybe that's still in the heads. I cannot look in the heads of the decision makers of Ukraine and Georgia and Azerbaijan. I have no access, but I can just speculate what could be the reason. And I have now listed all these 20 reasons just to understand and discuss. They are all not valid. They are all confused. There is no economic, political, strategic argument against CEFTA membership. Yeah? Maybe they don't care, maybe they have not really discussed about it, I didn't reach through to the real decision makers, or there was really resistance in Serbia. You know, it's hard for me to, as somebody not sitting at the meetings or not having so much directly political access to these deliberations, to really understand what is happening. I've now listed all the various kind of ideas which could be there. I tried to address them, but the logical case that a CEFTA, not of 7 members, but of 10 or 11 members, yeah, would be economically much more rational, much more efficient, much more beneficial for everybody. Bigger markets really deliver higher prosperity, and the competition works better, the consumer choice works better, the preparations of all these mechanisms towards EU accession is also a proven fact of CEFTA. CEFTA really works. Yeah? Everything has complications in Eastern Europe. There is not a perfect panacea magic solution, but it has proven to solve trade conflicts between all the partners. It has a mechanism, it has an office in Brussels, it has a track record which is strong. The Polish and the Slovaks and the Slovenians still know it. Yeah? There are trade officials there and the ministries who worked with that. It's really working. Yeah? It has worked since '92. So I can only recommend for Georgia and Ukraine to really take that step now, to address all this internal kind of thinking, or just don't care. Trust me, it's the best thing to do. I really recommend it, and please join CEFTA in this year, and then the road towards Europe will be much better. It will be not automatically open, that's a political task, but it will be much better because there will be more prosperity in the countries, in the Balkans, in Eastern Europe, together united, and it will be also very beneficial for Belarus, for Armenia if they don't join, or also for Azerbaijan if it doesn't join, because higher prosperity in Georgia and in Ukraine will already lift the whole boat of the Eastern Partnership countries upwards. especially Ukraine, if you can really reform, similar like the Balkans, yeah, what I say since 4 years, yeah, this will lift the whole Eastern Europe. Yeah. It's a big country, 40 million, maybe 37, but if you go back to the levels of prosperity which Bulgaria has, which Montenegro has, yeah, you know, that will be meaning doubling GDP in a decade, yeah? And this should be the task, yeah? And CEFTA is the frame to do it, and it will lift everybody up, and please join CEFTA. Thanks a lot.